All right, Marta, super excited to chat today. I think this is a success story for the internet because a couple people had pointed me towards your post about your sabbatical, and Reddit was super excited by it and all the traction it was getting. We can talk a little bit about like marketing one's sabbatical, but and wanted to connect. So, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's kind of cool to hear you say it sounds like your sabbatical was a success because when I decided to do it, I didn't know if it would be successful.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a bit of a double-edged sword too, right? What we consider to be success, or what we're trying to get out of something that's not supposed to be productive. So
Yeah.
we can definitely get into that. But
Yes.
so give me like a 30,000 foot view of like where were you? How long did you take? What point in your life did this happen?
Yeah. Okay. The high level view is this was an unplanned sabbatical, really. Um, I just sort of been feeling like I needed a break. I loved my company that I was at. I loved all my colleagues. I loved my team. I loved everyone, but I just felt kind of overwhelmed, as I think we all have and did, and it's probably still do, given the past 2 years. And one day I just sort of was like, you know what? I think the answer is a break. And I was really lucky that my husband was super supportive and said, "Yeah, do whatever you need to do." And so I went to my boss and I just said, "Hey, like I think I'm going to take a break." And it kind of felt like it's not you, it's me, but it really was. It wasn't them, it was me. I needed a bit of a break. I needed to reconnect with my family, and I needed to kind of change up how I was living and working. And I didn't know what that was, but I knew I just needed to have a break. And my work was super supportive. I gave a month's notice, and I, worked with them to figure out, how do I make sure I'm not leaving any gaping holes? And everyone was really supportive. It was very scary to do, but my family, my friends, my colleagues. So I felt really supported. And I did this in June, and I took a 4-month sabbatical.
This is June of this year, so
June of
2020.
this year. Yes. June of
Awesome.
21. Yeah.
Yeah, really excited to dig in on a pandemic sabbatical because I know that in one of the things a question I always get is, do people have negative experiences on sabbatical? And, we've really tried hard to get those stories, and we haven't heard many of them. I mean, folks have gotten literally divorced on their sabbatical. They've taken care of kind of, dying loved ones, but the reflection has always been positive. And the exceptions to that are folks who took pandemic sabbaticals, because I think it really made it tough to do some of the things that folks really want to do, and meet new people, things like that. But those stories were pre-vaccine, and so I think that the vaccine and like the reopening a little bit this past summer was a bit of a significant different context than 2020.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you define sabbatical. Like you said, some people are able to go and like live this world, dream of traveling the world, and that wasn't really the reason why I did it. I was more of like, I need to break. I kept saying unplug from the matrix. I think you and I talked about that. Like, I don't know any other way to describe it, but I needed to kind of unplug from the matrix and retrain my brain and what was normal to me, what was normal working engagement time, and what was normal family time. So the purpose of mine was just like, I need to stop time. I want to gain time, and I want my brain to rest versus some lofty travel goal, which, just
Yeah.
shows how sabbaticals are sort of different. So for me, the pandemic, yeah, like I'm sure I would have loved to go and travel the world, but I did a lot of local traveling. I did a lot of traveling. We have a camper van. I did a lot of that. For me, the best things were not necessarily trips taken, but just quality time with loved ones and family that we frankly didn't get to do for really a year and a half to 2 years, until the vaccine started showing up, and there was less of a shutdown. So for me, it didn't really disrupt what a sabbatical could be.
So I'm assuming you got lots of time, during that period with friends and family, but just not quality time.
Yeah, definitely. And I got a lot of quality time with my husband and my son. And honestly, like just or anyone who's working at this time, it's super intense, and it's really hard to really have focused time. And for me, in a role that I had, which is employer branding and engagement and social impact and internal comms, right? I was constantly working which, and it was important work and I was grateful that I got to do it, but I really didn't get to give a lot of focused, uninterrupted time to my family. So
Mm.
for me, it was about getting some of that and refocusing my energy to them.
Yeah. So, okay, you said that your husband was supportive. What, like, did he see it coming? Was it a surprise? And from personal experience, so my partner actually just left on her sabbatical a couple days ago. So I'm
Oh, wow.
in not in bachelor land, but in whatever living that life for a month while she goes off on her kind of yoga meditation retreat. But I knew it was coming. You know, it was like a year in advance, and interesting being the sabbatical person is that you kind of like know that that's the step they should take, but you know
Yeah.
you can't push too hard. So what role did your husband have kind of in discovering it or helping you uncover it or enabling?
Yeah, and congratulations to your partner. That's really exciting. My husband was an enabler, and it wasn't shocked. It was kind of like, well, yeah, why wouldn't you do this? Kind of.
Yeah.
He had been telling me, like I was saying, I just feel so tired. I just feel so burnt out. And he was like, just take a break. And I was like, I can't do that. And every time he'd say, why? I'd be like, I don't know. And he'd say, well, I don't know isn't an answer, which was true. And so when I came to him being like, I think I'm finally going to do it, he was like, good, you should. What do you need from me? And I said nothing. And he was like, okay, great. So it
and
was very supportive.
And so, you know, lots of folks have that story of not taking long breaks, but where did you get the idea to take that break?
Oh, I don't even know where I guess it was a couple different factors. I talked to a few friends. One of my mentors and good friends has always stressed the importance of a personal board of directors.
Mm.
So I have a personal board of directors that I chatted with and was just explaining how I was feeling. And all of them said, why don't you just take a break?
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I guess I could do that. But for some reason, it just wasn't even an option in my mind, probably because I never have. I've never really had a break. I went working right from college. I had 2 weeks off.
Mm.
When I did have my son, it was 10 years ago, and maternity leave was so different than it is now. I really didn't get much time off with him. So to me, the idea of like a respite wasn't really something that I thought of as an option. So people sort of said, why don't you take this break? And I was like, yeah, that's great. And at first I was like, it's going to be a month. And they were like, I think you're going to find that you're going to need more than that. And I was like, no, I think it's going to be fine. And then the more I talked to people, I was like, okay, I'm just going to say 3 months. 3 months feels solid. And then I ended up taking 4.
And so how did you think about, like, I mean, one of the things that we hear a lot is, you know, folks with partners and with kids find it really tough to kind of carve out that time. It looks like you did it over the summer, so it was kind of like already carved out so you could spend quality time. How did you decide on that period of time and the length?
Yeah. I think it was kind of happenstance that I happened to decide this in like May. And just sort of was like, okay, I think I'm going to do it. And when I made that decision, I was like, ooh, that would be summer. And it would be much easier to have summer break and I could spend it with my son. That's something I've never been able to do, right? More than a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. So that sounded really appealing. So I
And how old
decided
is
that
your son?
he's 10,
Okay.
just turned
So
10.
10 years, never spent kind of a couple weeks during the summer hanging out.
I've spent like maybe 2 weeks at a time, but nothing more than that
Yeah,
consecutive. It's just how it is of the nature of type
totally.
of work that I do. So that was great to think about. And so the summer allowed a lot of possibility. It allowed more possibility of travel with my husband too, who might be off at certain points. And then I just kind of came up with a 3 months because it sounded like a nice solid number, like a quarter. Again, my brain was still in business quantifications on it. Like a quarter is a great amount of time. And then my husband was like, you can always take more. Don't rush if you need to. And the extra month I just did because I realized I wanted one more once I was in it.
And you know, how did you think about structuring? So I know that you ended up working and kind of running your own consulting business, and we'll get into that. But did you think about work at the end during that last month, or were you kind of thinking about it throughout the course of the time?
I really wasn't thinking about it until the end. I really wanted to just, my husband is a recruiter and is really great about pitching. And he's like, you have to have your pitch down because everyone's going to start bothering you. And everyone's going to start like asking you what your timeline is. And you need to have your pitch. And he's always right about that. So in the beginning, I just sort of said, I'm going to take a break. I'm not going to respond to anything for 3 months. And immediately when I told people I was taking time off and I was leaving, I got inundated with a bunch of requests, which was amazing. Like lots of support, lots of people telling me, if you want to talk about this, I've done the sabbatical, let's chat. I've done consulting. I'd like to hire you. And so I had that pitch down, which was like, hey, thanks so much for reaching out to me. I'm going to take this 3 months. And if you're open to it, I'd love to connect in 3 months. And most people then really respected that timeline. And during those 3 months, I really tried to not think about work at all. And I really just tried to work on being present. I had a few things I wanted to do, like going through some of those to-dos. And then towards the end, I did a couple of interviews for full time of around the 3 months. And it just didn't feel right to me. It just kind of was like, oh, I've done this before. I don't think I want to do this. And I decided that I wanted to go the consulting route. And so towards the end, I decided that's the route I was going to go.
Awesome. I mean, tell me a little bit about your journey throughout work. I mean, is being in a kind of independent consulting, starting your own business, is that always been a dream, or does it feel like, like you're getting off the corporate track? Like, how did you think about work growing up, and how has it changed?
Woo, so many questions. Okay, let's break that down. And to digest those, what was the first thing you asked me out of that series of questions?
Just talk to me about your journey through kind of work, like how you thought about it over time and how you got here.
Yeah, really never had any plan for work, to be totally honest. I've fallen into the careers I've been into. I always, I had a traditional career in marketing for the first half of my career. And I did content marketing, and I did things like event marketing. I did B2B, B2C marketing. And then I eventually fell into the role that I do now, which is employee engagement, employer brand, and social impact work. I've always sort of followed, this is going to sound cheesy, but I've followed my heart. Like I've really followed companies that I believe are going to treat people well. I've followed people that I love working for. I followed places where I'm inspired. And I follow places where I think they're going to help me do my best work and kind of, give me the autonomy to be really creative. So that's kind of how I thought about work, to be totally honest. It's never been like I had this 5 and 10-year plan. I've just sort of let one thing take me. As far as, I've never thought of it untraditionally as in not working in-house at a company. I've always been a W-2 employee for over 20 years. So that is definitely something that's new to me. When I thought about consulting and I thought about what am I optimizing for as far as how I want to live, like after this sabbatical, it was owning my time. And I felt like the consultant route would be definitely helping me own my time. And I also really enjoy working with different companies and helping them problem solve. And to me, there was an opportunity to really do that and take the skills I have and help different companies, not just one company. So those two things for me kind of led me to the consulting route.
Yeah, I mean, that story about kind of folks not making intentional decisions about work and life, it just kind of being a factor of, small decisions you make, whether it's what your major is and what your peer group is doing and, what people do, what jobs are offered. And then folks often look back and say, like, I don't know if I've made an intentional choice to be where I am right now. Even if they're not super dissatisfied with it, just like taking a step back. So
yeah, I think I've always made the intentional choice to network. I believe networking is super powerful. I believe you should always network with people, and the network has led me to career opportunity.
And do you remember points or a specific moment during your sabbatical where this kind of light bulb went off about like actually owning my time is the most important thing, or like I'll financially be okay? I mean, that's like going from 20 years W-2 to kind of, hunting your own prey or whatever is that's a big change.
Yeah. I think it was really just the fact that like I had loved how I was able to be really present and also be a really present mom in my sabbatical. And so for me, I was thinking, well, what else can I do to really own that time and also still be able to be really present? I'm turning 40 in a couple weeks. And I sort of had this realization that I've lived the first 40 years one way and I want to live them differently the next 40. And so for me, it was, well, how can I do what I love and I think I'm good at as a career, but also how can I give a lot more of that time to my family who hasn't gotten it maybe so much the past 40 years. So that sort of was a guiding decision. And then as far as, consulting, it was scary. It's very scary to do something you've never done before. Anything like that is scary, but every time I challenge myself to do something new, I find that it pushes me into a really good direction. So I relied on my network. I had great groups of people who reached out to me and said, hey, I saw your post. I see what you're doing. If you want any advice, you want to talk, let me know. So I hit up again, sort of people that I knew that I really respected and loved, and just said, hey, if you're willing to give me your most precious commodity, which I believe is time, I would love to pick your brain. And so I did. I picked people's brains. I kind of, got my bearings, and I got a lot of great advice to help me think through. And I had to calculate, yeah, what can I do this? How much do I have to work? Can I make enough to live? It's a lot of life investing. I worked with a financial advisor to understand more about it. It took a little bit of time to get together.
Yeah, I mean, did you talk to the financial advisor before you went on sabbatical? Like, how did you think about finances and affording to do so and all of that?
I did. I also want to point out, hi, Claire Johnson. I totally see your question, and we'll get to it. And hello to you. um, I talked to a financial advisor before. Actually, I hadn't, really hadn't had one before, which I think is something that I wish I would have done earlier on in life. My husband and I found a great financial advisor, and before I started the sabbatical, we started to chat about, what we could do and what we could afford, and I think that also helped me think about it. So that is a super important step, I think, to take.
Did Are there any kind of broad lessons that are easily applicable to folks about that? Like they were saying, hey, think about this much amount of savings, or anything that's more applicable.
One thing I really loved about our financial advisor is she advises on when work can be optional versus just retiring, which was a new concept to me. I think I've always heard, well, you retire and then that's it. And she pointed out that there can be different periods in your life where work is optional. And right now, you're about to enter one where it's optional for 3 months for you. And I love that. So there was a really good reflection on there's kind of long-term work optional, or maybe you do something different that you've always wanted to do that doesn't require the same amount of income versus just like you hit this age and then you do nothing. So I really liked looking at it from that perspective.
So it was like a little bit of sprinkling your retirement earlier along your career, but also kind of viewing it as more of an investment as opposed to like an expense.
Yeah. Or I guess just you don't have to retire to take a break. Where I
Yeah.
think the way that I was brought up and my generation was like, well, you work forever and then you take a break. And I think that it was nice to think like, oh yeah, I guess I could take a break and then I could also continue to work because I'm not done working yet. But again, I wasn't really raised in that era to think that way.
Yeah. No, I mean we're the same age, same kind of hypothesis about work. And I think that this concept of like it's not like I've never had a company kind of save for my retirement for me, right? It's always been what they call like a protean career. So like you have to figure it out, you have to make the decisions, you have to care for yourself. And both that combination of jobs lasting 3 to 5 years and having a dozen over the course of our lifetime, and like the fact that like it's up to us to take care of our own health and retrain and that kind of thing, I think leads to these great opportunities for breaks in the middle of stuff.
I think that's such a great point because it's true. Like you really do need to drive your own career, and you drive so many things in your career. You drive the direction, you drive kind of, hey, I want to take on this stretch assignment. You drive, hey, I want this promotion. Like, why aren't we driving? Hey, I need a break. It should totally be normalized, which is why I love what you're doing. And I think this project is so important.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely happening now. I mean, I think folks kind of stared COVID in the face and work and home responsibilities in the face and said, this is what actually things are, and here's what it could be. So it's an exciting moment. But okay, so rewind us and talk us back. You decided to take the sabbatical. You talked to your employer. Like, first of all, how was that conversation? And how would you kind of counsel folks who are leaning into that conversation?
Yeah, it was a great conversation. I really I was nervous to have it because I really loved my boss and I really liked her. And I knew it was also kind of going to come as a shock because I wasn't really hinting towards it at all. I think it might have come out of nowhere. But what I would say is the best thing you can do is really just explain the why, like the why you're going to take this break. And also really have written down what is important to you, because I think there's a great opportunity for negotiations and companies to think through other options for you. Because some people might be like, hey, I don't really need a full break. Maybe the company will let me have a month and that's enough. So I think it's important to understand what it is that you're optimizing for yourself. Why are you taking that break? Can the company give you what you're optimizing for? And if not, then that's the reason why. For me, it was the reason is time. And the company could give me so much time, but not as much as I really think I wanted. And also, I was very honest in that um, I didn't know if I would want to come back after I had my
Mm,
break. And I wouldn't want to do that to them
yeah.
because I love them a lot and I wanted them to be successful. And I didn't want to hinder their success from me kind of not being sure if I was going to come back. So I think that's also an important factor to put out to companies
Hmm.
and just really having an open, honest conversation. And I think you'll find that people are super supportive. The other advice I would say is give as much time as you can because I do think it's really valuable. And it's a respect, it's a sign of respect to your bosses and your team to say, hey, like, this is why I'm doing this, but I'm going to leave you in a good state. I'm not going to abandon you.
Yeah.
Because I had a really great team and I loved everyone I worked with, and I didn't want them to feel like I was just leaving them and it was them because they weren't the issue. It was me. I wanted to take a break.
Yeah. Okay. And so when did you start planning it? Like, how did you think about what you wanted to do? And like, which parts were you certain about and which did you kind of explore your way into over the course of the time?
Yeah. I made like a rough list of a few things I wanted to do, and they were all very like low to the ground, small things. Like, hey, I think I want to go on a couple trips. I would like to ride my bike 2 times a week. I want to go weekday surfing because I live in San Diego by the beach. I want to volunteer my time for nonprofits or for small businesses that my friends own. I just made a couple rough things like that. And I tried to keep a lot of it open because for me, the way that I've had to live and work the past 20 years, every minute of every day is scheduled. And I don't get a lot of spontaneity. And so the idea that I could just have my day be open and choose what direction I wanted to go is something I haven't really got to do. So that was really exciting for me. And the other thing that I wanted to be really mindful of is being overproductive because I think our society tends to want to over maximize time and be really productive. And what was the ROI from your sabbatical? You know, and I'm a Capricorn, so I'm trying to be like that. So a lot of it was retraining my brain to not have to like make it really productive. And I was also shocked. I had people ask me like, well, what are your goals? And how are you going to measure this? And I was like, do I have to measure my sabbatical? I just kind of want to have some time off.
I mean, what you're saying makes total sense. And I feel like after I'm working with people for a while, I can get them to say the things that you're saying. But how did you have this self-knowledge that you needed to not schedule, even though you were a scheduler, and you needed to not like overproduce, even though sound like you're pretty type A?
I think it was just from number one, pure exhaustion. And number two, I think realizing that like that's part of it is that we're always driving that way in kind of our society. And number two, going back to my like board of directors, a few of them had taken sabbaticals and were like, don't fall into that trap. Don't fall into that trap at all.
Yeah.
And I guess to answer Claire's question,
Yeah.
on how do you create one, this is again great advice that I got from one of my mentors, which is just find the people that you really trust. You've worked with them, they can be people in your life, they can be friends, family, but they're the people that really know you. They know the good and the bad of you, and they're going to nudge you out of your comfort zone. And so I recommend when you create a personal board of directors, it's those type of people across different walks of life that are going to nudge you and push you when you need to be pushed and nudged.
So I totally agree and believe in this and actually have a relationship board of advisors. Um,
Ooh.
but did you talk to them kind of about your sabbatical and like, did you follow up with them after the sabbatical? What was the summary?
Yeah, they actually were very proactive with checking up on me and being like, how's it going? What are you finding surprising? I visited with many of them on the sabbatical, saw them in person, had some quality time. But yeah, they constantly checked up on me. So that also speaks to the type of people that you want on your board of directors is they're not going to just tell you the hard stuff, but then they're going to follow up with you and keep you accountable.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked to the board of directors just basically to figure out what you needed to do versus what you maybe had wanted to do. It sounds like you're a little bit burnt out, and so obviously, like even the ability and energy to do as much planning as you'd like to do is constrained. Um, like, walk us through the 4 months. Like, what did they look like?
Yeah, the first month was just sort of getting used to not having to do things and honestly catching myself of trying to be overproductive. I would say that fear of not being relevant kept creeping up for me. Like, what? I'm going to disappear for 4 months, 3 months. No one's going to care. No one will hire me again. Like, those are the kind of fears that came into my mind. And I had to be like, those are so irrational. What are you talking about? So initially I kept getting hit up like, oh, would you do this talk, or would you do this, or would you have this conversation? I was like, yes, yes to everything. And then I had to stop and be like, actually, one of my board of directors was like, are you nuts? What are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. And she had to remind me that, like, hey, don't waste this time. And so that was a really good realization. So I honestly, the first month, I had to work on just that. Like, I don't need to set up a bunch of calls. I don't need to have a bunch of conversations with people. I don't need to do that. You just need to enjoy and unplug. I also worked on stopping phantom scrolling on my phone, which I don't know if you can relate to, but
I
it
know
really.
nothing about that. No.
I mean, I would find myself, I was really in a job where I had to always be on and check things that, like, I would just wake up and find myself. Once I would left, I didn't have Slack, I didn't have email. I took everything off my device I could, and I would just like be scrolling the weather. And I was like, what are you doing?
It's like, but
So
I'm in San Diego. It's always perfect.
I know it's embarrassing, but I feel like I need to be really honest about it. So I think it just shows the state that your brain is in
Yeah.
sometimes, right? So really, the first month was just like, it's okay to not have anything going on. You will not be irrelevant. It was a lot of self-talk. You don't need to scroll. There's nothing for you to check. And you need to just think about, like, instead of just like thinking about that, just get out and go do something you want to do. So it was like doing one thing I'd like to do every week. That was the first month. The second month was much
Wait,
easier.
can we just stop for a second?
Yeah.
So I think that this disconnection piece is super important. Can you just talk a little bit more about the things you did to disconnect? So you uninstalled stuff. Like, did you find anything else helpful that you would have wished you'd have known earlier? Like, I'm assuming, did you set an away message? Like, you told people that you're going to be gone somehow? I think you're not open to.
I posted on LinkedIn that I was taking a break, and I got a lot of great, amazing support. And I think for the first 2 weeks, I also worked to respond to people, because I got a lot of really amazing outreach that was so touching. Like, people that I knew, like I said, giving me advice or saying, if you want to talk, I've done this. It's been so great. When you're ready to work again, let's chat, which I was like, great, 3 months. And then people who I honestly did not know, who just said, hey, this is like the post I needed to see. I've been toying with this. Like, thank you for sharing. And so I felt, because people that I didn't know were being really vulnerable and reaching out to me, I wanted to honor that. And so I made a point to write anyone back that messaged me on LinkedIn. So I would say, like, doing that was great. And then after 2 weeks, it quieted down, and I was like, okay, I'm not looking anymore. So I didn't do an out of office message. I just sort of like put my boundary up on LinkedIn. I was not going to be there. I stopped checking. I stopped responding to people on LinkedIn after those first 2 weeks. Slowly, my emails started to like dwindle. I got less and less, because I just had my pitch. Hey, thanks so much for reaching out. Let's talk in 3 months. I'm not ready for anything. Thanks so much. I'll chat with you then. And I think that is the most important piece of advice I could give, is have your pitch down. I'm leaving. I'd love to talk to you. This is when I'm going to be available to talk again. Have a date ready. Because I think that is a really important, like, takeaway for people. The other thing is, I just went through my apps and I removed anything that was unnecessary that I had for work that I didn't need. And then the third way that I unplugged was, anytime I found myself phantom scrolling the weather, I just immediately went like this. And I was like, get outside. And I walked outside. And I was like, go for a walk, go for a bike ride. And I just had to get myself in a different mode. Like, okay, you're not in this mode anymore. You're in like whatever you want mode. You're in adventure mode. You're in outside mode. You're in mom mode. Like, just do something different.
Okay, cool. So that's month one.
That's so emotional.
I know that folks, it's like very difficult for folks to believe that it takes that long to disconnect, because, people are like, oh man, if I could leave work tomorrow, I'm so burnt out, I'd be happy to leave. But I mean, in most of the interviews we hear, it's like a month, 6 weeks before people can really like set that identity aside and not worry that they're forgetting something, or they should be productive, or, as you said, they're going to disappear from people's minds or the face of the earth.
Yeah, one of my best friends said it's going to take you a month, and I was like, no way. Exact answer. I can't wait for this. 2 weeks, and she was totally right. It takes time to retrain yourself from a habit.
Okay, month 2 and on.
Month two and on. Okay. Month two, I was definitely more in the groove of like, all right, I'm not worried about that anymore. I've moved past that. And I did a lot of little fun road trips. I think I mentioned we have a camper van. So we took the camper van on some great camping trips as a family. Went to Lake Tahoe. My parents came to visit, which was wonderful. And we hung out with them for a week, and I posted about it. We did a sandcastle building class, which if you ever have the opportunity to do,
Nice.
super unique and fun.
Hmm.
Now I feel like I could make a decent sandcastle now. I, you know, went on again like little kind of local trips in California and just visited different friends that I hadn't seen in a long time that I really wanted to spend time with. And then I got outside a ton. I went on lots of hikes and bikes and bike riding and just beach time. Like I just got outside and was in the sun a ton.
And so throughout this time your husband's working, I'm assuming, is he like working remotely and just traveling with you, or is he back at home with the great weather? What's the
He's working remotely, so my son and I did a lot of travel, and then there were times there was a couple trips he'd planned to take off, so we adventured together. In August, he actually this was I was super like unplanned. He ended up um, getting a new job and taking time off, so we
Mm.
actually got to have a couple weeks together overlapping, which was fantastic. So we actually got to have like 3 weeks together off, which was great.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because, when people can't align their time off with their spouse or partner, like sometimes I hear that it's tough to be able to get into your own groove because you're kind of
Mhm.
doing your own thing, but you're kind of in like an everyday routine. So did you just like have your like working hours be like, this is Marta time and I'm gonna go do the stuff that I want to do? Or like how did you kind of set those have those
Yeah.
discipline?
Yeah, I think when he was working, obviously weekends and nights we would hang out together, but he was kind of like, go do whatever you need to do during the day. So there were days where I went, if my son was at like a summer camp, I would go and visit friends like in LA, or I would go and do something that took all day. But if my son didn't have camp, I'd be like, want to go on an adventure? And we would just go do stuff together.
Yeah. Did you get any alone time? So obviously you had like alone time during the day, but did you get extended alone time?
I did, and that, I mean, not as much as any parent wants alone time because we just alone time is such a precious thing. I did have to like a couple just girls trips with again another friend, or I did some hot hikes and things by myself. So for me, I probably got like across the 4 months, maybe like a week and a half total of alone time spread out, which probably to people who don't have kids think that's not alone time, but if someone with children, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the deal. When you have kids, it's like you don't necessarily get that same kind of alone time. Like it's not like I got to go travel to somewhere across the world and be by myself. It's just not really in
Yeah,
the cards much with a kid.
totally. So what were the highlights of the next that kind of second part of it?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the month, I planned and celebrated. My husband and I hit 15 years being married, so that was a pretty big milestone. And we really just felt like after the pandemic, everyone needed to laugh, and we love live comedy. So I had planned a live comedy anniversary party show. So it was an outdoor party for 50 of our friends, and we had four comics perform.
That's
So it was like
awesome.
part party, part comedy show. And so that was a huge highlight, just seeing so many friends and family I hadn't seen in a long time and just laughing for an hour and a half. It's nothing better than laughing for an hour and a half. There's no better way to feel after.
That's awesome. And then I know you'd also said like during this time you were like, yeah, had the van, you were touring around, like you're doing some volunteering stuff. Like, when people think about a sabbatical, they think about these like big events or big trips. But what was like the way that you were living your normal life differently that was kind of helpful for you?
Yeah, I think the way that I was living it differently was I wanted to just think about like what could I do that would really fulfill me, and for in like a state of like I don't need to go somewhere huge, but like things that just I you always want to do. Like there's always like if I was alone on an island, what would I want to do? Right. For me, it was obviously being outside. It's a big theme I'm talking about a lot. Just getting outside during the day because for so long, I'm sure people felt
Mm.
this way. We were all on our computers, just sitting here on a screen, And like that kind of kills my soul a bit. So honestly, I just wanted to be outside in the sun. And so for me, it was like making sure I was getting outside every day, whether it
Mhm.
was again like doing some activity with my son or surfing or swimming or whatever. So that was one way. Um, Another thing was supporting my community and helping friends. So I felt like I was able to show up for friends and volunteer my time. Again, I think time is such a precious commodity. So being able to give my time to causes and people was really important to me. So doing that. And then honestly, impromptu trips, because I didn't have so much scheduled and we do have this camper van. There were lots of times where it was just like, hey, let's get in that van and go. And we didn't plan a lot. We would just like go adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you kind of emerge differently? Like, what do you feel like changed as a result of this time off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I emerged feeling really grateful that I was able to do this, because I do understand it is not something everyone can do, and it's certainly a privilege. And I'm just grateful that I was able to do it. I emerged like, wow, I really want whatever I do next. I want to be able to be more involved with like, being part of my son and taking him to school and picking him up. One thing I got to do in the later part of the sabbatical was pick up my son every day from school, which I've never been able to do consistently in my whole like time of having him.
Yeah.
So I wanted to continue to do that, or be the one to take him to soccer practice, or just things I couldn't do before. And then I also just thought, I want to really do great work and do the work that I love, but I don't want every piece of my energy and time to go to that work. I want to make sure that there's some energy and time that also goes to other things that are important to me, which again can be my family, passion projects I have, volunteering, things like that.
Mm.
So I emerged thinking about that as kind of, hey, I want to live life a little bit differently the next 40 years.
And did you? So obviously you've changed like the nature of your work, but did you change the orientation of it? I noticed like in your post you talked about like working with social impact and inclusion strategies. Like, has that kind of maintained the same, or did you change your direction on that?
No, that's work I'd been doing before. So it's, I guess, the only direction I had changed really is I'm still doing the same kind of work I was doing, the employer branding, engagement, social impact, inclusion, but um, again, for consulting in a different way to help different companies versus one company.
Yeah.
And I'm able to, again, like control my time a bit more so that I'm able to do that work. And it's really fulfilling and satisfying to me. I absolutely love it. But again, it's not taking every bit of my energy, or every hour of my day is going towards that work. I'm able to carve out time, I think, in a better way to support my family.
Um, how did this? You talked about like wanting to be more present and not doom scroll or phantom scroll. Like, how did you emerge on those dimensions? Do you feel like you've launched right back in, or has it had like a more longer term impact?
It really had an impact on me to stop it. I mean, really, and take a break and like pause and reset. So I think that I have been much better about it. I think I'm much better at like stopping, checking my emails at a certain time, checking them in the morning. And I think that's just the nature of the work that I'm doing, right? When I'm in house, it's a little different than as a consultant, where you might not be as on call. And again, the type of work that I do, some consultants, they're crisis consultants and they're all the time. But I think it has really given me the perspective that, I don't need to be on it as much, and I can set working hours and boundaries. And even if someone, responds to me, I'll just say, hey, is it okay if I get this to you by X time? And they'll be like, oh yeah, sure. Whereas before you would just do it, or you would just respond right away because
Yeah,
that's kind of the thing you're used to. So I think it
totally.
helped me just reset, like, hey, it's okay to not respond right away. And you can still respond in a timely way that's not immediate.
And how did this affect your relationships? So with your son, with your partner, the friends and family and folks you're able to spend more time with, like,
Yeah. I mean, my son is like, I'll ask him, hey, is it annoying that I'm around more? Do you like it? And he said, no, I love it. I love that you can take me to soccer. I love that you can, pick me up from school. So I think that has been great and an awesome thing that I can do. Um, I think my husband's been wonderful and supportive, and I think probably better because I don't think I was the best version of myself the past 2 years, just how much I was working and how overloaded I was. So I think, we're definitely better because I'm a better version of myself. So I would imagine it's affected everyone positively because I feel like I like myself better because I'm a better version of myself.
Yeah. And okay, so for those that are like looking at you and saying, this sounds great, but I have concerns about taking time off. Like, what's the pitch?
I mean, I think the pitches, those are all fair concerns. And I think the pitch is, if you figure out what works for you, right? Like, I think there's different types of breaks, there's different types of sabbatical, to your point, right? Like, some people's might be different where they're going off by themselves to a yoga retreat. Like, every sabbatical doesn't have to look the same. And it really start with what you're trying to get out of it. For me, I just wanted time. I just wanted time to let my brain rest and to be a little more present in my life. So I think thinking about what is most important to you and then figure out what realistic looks like for you under those terms. Maybe it's that you work a little longer and you plan it for a year or 2 years out. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's a couple weeks. I think it's just important to think through what makes sense for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on that note, do you have plans for the next one? Do you have thoughts on kind of when or what it would look like, or what are you thinking for that in the future?
I have no thoughts or plans about a future sabbatical. I feel really energized just by those 4 months that I took, that I don't feel the need to like figure out another one. I think it'd be great to do it in another 10 years, but right now it's not even something I need to do, I think, right now, because I feel like I've gotten a lot out of the 4 months I took.
Awesome. Great. Any parting thoughts?
I'm trying to think. I think that if anything, a lot of the fear can hold you back from taking it is, again, like the fear that I had, which was you can feel irrelevant. You can feel like you're no longer, people aren't going to want to hire you. And I think those fears will always be there. And it's really important to push past those fears and really figure out that like you will be relevant. You will be able to find a job. You will be able to figure out, and maybe what you're doing currently, you'll think of something different that's going to bring you a different level of happiness and feeling accomplished. So don't be afraid of the change.
Yeah.
And silence those negative voices. That's what I would say.
No, it's awesome. I mean, I think especially because I'm seeing more and more folks, list it on their LinkedIn profile, which you did, and kind of do these public facing posts. And so I know that really helps empower other people and kind of serve as an example to other folks. So, thanks for contributing to the movement.
Well, thank you. And thank you for creating this great movement and actually like having this whole series of interviews, because I think perpetuating it and normalizing it is so important. And at some point, hopefully more companies can even offer paid sabbaticals. I think that would be an incredible outcome from all these people taking sabbaticals.
Yeah, no, definitely for folks that are out there listening. So if you work at a company that you have the kind of ability to make a policy, happy to work with y'all to study it and to design it. For folks contemplating sabbaticals, we have these sabbatical cohort classes, which is gathering kind of once a week for a month and kind of establishing community and learning from the research on it. So if there's any way that I can be helpful to the folks out there listening, do reach out. But appreciate your help and work on that, Marta. And
thank you for reaching out to me. And it just shows again the power of LinkedIn. Like, we've never met each other and you just happened to reach out and we had a couple conversations and here we are. So the power of a network is super important.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks all.
All right.